And I'm going to stop my share because mine is always messier than yours. But
Uh-oh.
I won't do it until you are you've got your slides open and stuff. But right now, just to orient you, we're talking about the influencing themes video, and we're starting to just dive into why you feel some of the influencing themes have more of an edge than some of the others, and also why they might be harder to explain or communicate to other people, kind of what they mean. And Lauren, if you want to say a little bit more about that, like if you break them up into like relationship building and influencing, I know what you mean. The relationship building people are like able, oh, I see, this is how I do it, this is how I do it. And some of the influencing themes are just a little less obvious, but it's all infused through so much. And sometimes I think that having the influencing category is what throws people.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like, well, how do I use my competition to influence? I don't quite understand. But if you tell someone like, well, do you turn everything into a competition? And they're like, oh yeah.
Well, I'll say that I've been in a session twice where people go to their 4 quadrants and discuss, and every other group always says, these are my people, I understand, like they get me. And the influencers both can't report out how they are different. They don't have as productive of communication, which is funny because communication is in there. And at the end, they don't feel better by have meeting, where I feel like the other groups have. And I don't know if that's a wacky thing that has just happened twice in my life, but it's happened both times. And I'll also say we always have, it's the group that we always have the least amount of people in.
And you'll notice that in general, unless you have a strange group, everyone, that is almost always true. Because some of the themes inside the influencing themes are the more rare themes, just in general, but you will often just see that in a group, like time and time again, unless you have, so there's like a group of marketing people that I worked with, and they had a bunch of yellow, and that was kind of interesting because you're right, it's not that they necessarily felt super cohesive, but they work together, so they did kind of get it. But normally you will not see that. Like this group actually has a pretty high representation of influencing themes for a group this size, I think. But none of you really have, let's see, we don't have, self-assurance is pretty rare, but significance is pretty rare. We don't have anybody here with significance, except Hassan, but he's not on the call. Yeah, and you have some lone wolves. Aside from woo, in communication, you're right, but aside from woo, and especially if the other things are influencing, not to play on words there, but woo's really the only one in that group that's kind of like interested in that kind of has like a real investment in getting people to like them and sort of supporting that. The other ones, it really depends on what else is happening, and like activator may or may not need that at all. Again, depending on what the other ones. So it's a very interesting thing to watch. I agree. Adam, do you want to say more? And welcome, by the way.
Thank you.
Do you want to say more about that edge? Because I know you've thought a lot about it.
Yeah, the edge of the influencing themes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I have a friend of mine. She's a really good coach named Rhonda, Strengths Finder coach. And this is her words for maximizer. It's not the most politically correct term, but she says maximizer is her bitch theme. like that's the theme that other people might take as being edgy for her. She also has woo, so it softens it a little bit. But I've seen her get into maximizer mode, and maximizer mode is like, hey, I want the best. It's not the best, so let's move on, and other people like, oh, that's kind of startling. It takes people aback. But as with all the themes, it's not personal. It's just, this is what my radar is attuned to, and this is what I want in my life. And so when they say it, it can come off a little rough, so there's that. And then significance, I'm in the middle of a 3-day class, Glinda may have mentioned to you. We're taking this group of managers through StrengthsFinder, and then we're taking them through a communication class, so it's all together. And so we have 2 people with significance in there, and you just see it every time. People will read their signature themes description of significance, and it's just not that complimentary. So whenever I have somebody who says, I don't like my themes, I'm usually like pretty sure that they have significance in their top 5, and that's the one they're talking about. But also competition has that edge. And so we have one woman in there that has significance and competition. And so I try to really make sure to frame these themes in a positive way. With significance, one of the most, one of the things that I rely on most is that this is Dr. Clifton's #1 theme. I mean, the guy who created StrengthsFinder, he wanted something to be significant, to stand out. And so, that I try to capture that in the wording of significance too, in the bullet points that we've created. So let me share that. So I try to say driven by meaningful, worthy endeavors, which I think is true. And it's sort of like that also is more palatable than you want to be important in the eyes of others, strives to be unique and above average. I think that's a nice way to also say what the Gallup's description would say. Enjoys working independently and infusing their personal flair. So again, not what it says in the signature themes report, but also I think is true. Inherent desire to be outstanding, another way to say it, and it's true. And thrives on pressure and big moments. And that's something I don't know really comes out in Gallup's description, but I remember Kurt Liesfeld talking about it, that people who really want to be there and take the last second shot or to make that big presentation, people with significance they rally and they thrive on it. So that's the way that I frame it. Self-assurance can just come off as like, I don't really care what you think. And it's kind of true. I mean, it's not that they don't care what you think, but what you think is not going to shape what they think. There's severe independence that comes with self-assurance. And it's not about downplaying other people. It's just a real sense of confidence in themselves. So that could have an edge to it as well. Woo is... Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Adam. Go ahead.
Let's see. I do think communication is a theme that really might be second to woo in terms of, in this category, a people orientation. And when I describe this, and there was a guy in this program, he's the only one with communication, and he said that's the one he least connected with. He doesn't really see himself as a communicator. And then when I said, I tried this with him, I said, for communication, the way I interpret it is it's about fidelity of message. Message sent equals message received. So if you're sending the message, you really want to send it in a way that other people receive it. And so you're going to be looking for ways to do that. And when other people are talking, you want to make sure their message is received as it was sent. And that helped him connect to it right away. And then the last 2 days, there was several examples where he was very clearly trying to make sure message sent equals message received, whether it was somebody else who he was observing, communicating, and wanting to make sure he understood them, or whether it was him communicating so that other people could understand. So, there's that. And I could talk about more. Command especially has an edge to it. And even activator can really be an edge, because these things aren't so concerned about what people think of them, but about getting something started, about cutting through clear fog and indecision and confusion, winning. Now what I also say about competition is that it is more about comparison. Before you can compete, you need to know where you stand. And so people with competition often have a really clear sense of where they stand in relation to others in terms of their performance. And that's what they're really looking for. And winning just secures that status, or that where they stand in relation to others. But I don't think winning is always the priority. It often is. But if I'm comparing myself to someone else and I'm way out of their class, then I'm not really trying to beat them. It's unfair, and it's not satisfying for me if I'm too far above them. And if I'm too far below somebody, it's like futile to compete. And so winning is also not really the key there, but the comparison is always there. So that's how I think of that. So that's my dismount. I'll turn it back to you, Flinda, or anybody else that has thoughts.
Well, and competition can be about personal best in that. If they know there's not a possibility to win, they're going to work for personal best and that next level always. I really like a lot of these themes because for me, there's a lot of clarity in the way some of these themes present externally. And I know where people stand. Like if someone has Maximizer, I trust they're going to tell me where we're going, what they want to do. Like I trust someone with self-assurance to be really clear about what they want usually. And, you know, you guys can speak to that a little bit, but it is a lot of these themes have a more external expression. And because they're a little less concerned, and culturally, you know, that's sometimes frowned upon, which I don't personally agree with. I think we should be able to say what we need and want. So I actually relax around these themes because I know I don't have guesswork. Whereas if I know I'm around somebody like with harmony or empathy, and I'm not sure they're going to say what they want, my stress level does go up sometimes because I'm like, I'm not sure they're going to tell me what they need or want. So for me, I particularly do well with this group of themes. So turn over to you guys. More comments? Want to speak to any of that?
One of the things I wrote down, and I have 3 now, I didn't used to have 3 influencing, but I summed it up for myself as that a lot of my themes are driven by people, but I don't need to be accepted by those people.
Love it. Yes. Yeah, don't put you alone in a room too long. You can be alone for a while, but just not too long.
No.
Not going to be as happy as you could otherwise be, I'm guessing.
I don't do well alone for long periods of time.
I'll say I did appreciate the Maximizer label and definition, having grown up always being considered a perfectionist and hypercritical, where I saw myself more as detailed and meticulous. I think people understand it better now that they have some words to go along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, good. I'm so glad because now they know why, right?
Right.
My communication theme, I thought it was cool while it was going. I thought about the performance ladder as a kid. Not even kid, let's say through college, I talked and talked and talked and talked and talked and never shut up. And I feel like I've moved up the performance ladder now. And one of the things I've noticed is because I know what needs to be communicated when I meet with someone, I start knowing exactly, I have 10 minutes left, we have this much to talk about, and we got to get through this to ensure that message lands in those 10 minutes, where other people, I'm like, we're not far enough along. So I feel like I've noticed myself grow in that communication theme from childhood to now.
That's great. What I would say there is that you've matured that theme more. The performance ladder is more for an activity. So if like giving a presentation,
Okay.
you know. But yeah, right. Like you're able to, you've connected with it. You've observed it. You're able to interrupt it when, because the guy in this class that has communication, his concern is that he's worried about being too wordy and that he might overkill with his explanations of things. So like someone would ask him what time, metaphorically speaking, someone would ask him what time it is, and he'll explain the history of how the watch was invented and how it's made. And so learning to curtail that would be learning to interrupt it and then dialing it into the right level of nuance. And what you're describing really does sound like great nuance for the communication.
Well, and I think nuance as applies to that specific activity of like, we have to get this, idea to land here with this group. And so you're calling upon that in a perfectly balanced way for that need, that activity. And I think that's where you can start to really find those matches between those activities, where they're all going to be firing, but you're like, nope, we got to focus. It's communication. This is what it's about, and this, I have 10 minutes, go, Let's see. I don't see Anne on the call, but she has Woo. Does anyone else who has, I know Meryl said she had some background noise that was happening, but when she can, she might be able to speak to her maximizer.
Real quick, Kendra, I was wondering if you could speak to how you observe Anne's Woo. Like, do you see that as a theme of hers? And are there examples? And I'm not, trying to put you on the spot, even though I did. Just, I thought you work with her, you might see, her themes, her Woo come out. And I was just wondering if you had any observations about it.
Yes, absolutely. She is outgoing and very social. And I think I spoke on the first call or two about how she's Woo in her top 5 and my Woo is 34. So once we kind of figured that out, it really helped us understand that she's going to be better in those mingle kind of situations than I am going to be. That's not me, but it's totally her.
Great. Would you say you guys have found this sense of like when something is more a fit for you or when something is more a fit for her?
Yeah, I think she might say that detail is more my thing. So if she needs someone to have a detail on a document or whatever it may be, then she's going to turn to me for something like that.
That's great.
Or if I need someone to, for lack of a better word, schmooze, she's going to be able to do that better than I am.
Yeah, great. I don't know if I told you the guys the story about my 2 students, and one was very introverted and very organized. Her number 1 theme was discipline, and the other girl, Mackenzie, had Woo as her number 1, and they were best friends, but they were like unlikely friends. And the girl with discipline, she would describe how they'd go to some social event and she would tell Mackenzie, go meet those people and introduce me to them. And then Mackenzie would go and meet those people and then call the other one over, after she warmed up the crowd, so to speak, and created a pathway in. And so they were using this before they even knew their themes. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, and I think that's a really great example of you guys, working together on the team, because what would take a lot of energy for you and you still wouldn't enjoy it is probably fun for Anne and really easy, and vice versa for, the detail-oriented work. So I think that's so important to really try to capitalize within yourself, within the people and the teams, and we'll get into that more with the enablers too, but it's sort of like one of the things we use is strength drafting. It's like, you don't want to waste your energy and you don't want to suffer if for the other person that activity is just a breeze and enjoyable. It's like, just a little talk can usually uncover quite a few of those things. And it just really ups the enjoyment of the day and life, I think.
And she would say that works the same with our executive director too. They have a lot of things that they're doing together, and they know when the one needs to step up and the other can step back. And the strengths drafting, like you said, yeah, they've been doing that for years, but now they have some better understanding of why it works that way.
That's great. Now, do you want to speak a little bit about, you did say a little about your maximizer. Do you want to speak a little bit more about how that shows up for you? Any specific instances or?
Who is that you're asking, Felinda?
I was saying Kendra, but anyone with maximizer can speak if they like.
I'm sorry, what was the question? I think I missed it.
Oh, just if you wanted to speak a little bit more. I know you said a little bit about your maximizer already, but if you wanted to speak a little bit more about how that shows up for you.
Just, having an eagle eye on things. And I don't particularly enjoy editing, but proofreading has always been something that people would turn to me to do. That's just one example, but I see it come out a lot in just trying to make things better as best as they can be.
Thank you. And Meryl, I know you might have a chance to talk now. Do you want to say anything about your maximizer and how it shows up for you?
Yeah, my maximizer, I know that years ago it was definitely in the raw state completely because it was a monster. And I didn't know how to manage it because I was an absolute perfectionist in anything. And I think that I was incredibly critical of other people. And I knew that it was coming from a good place and the consequences weren't always very good. And I wasn't always popular. And especially with my own family. So in the home environment, if we'd entertain, I'd want to do it properly. And my husband said, why can't we just do any old thing? Why do we always have to, go above and beyond? And I'm going, but isn't that the way that everybody wants to do it? And
right, like why wouldn't you want to make it the best?
Yes, and if my home, I want to, I paint on the inside, I paint on the outside, and then we had a dining room that needed a dining room table, and for 2 years it sat empty because my maximizer couldn't find the perfect dining room table, and my husband said to me, if you don't find a dining room table in the next month, I'm going to find one and you might not like it. So my maximizer had to work very fast in finding the right dining room table. And I think that I procrastinate a lot with my maximizer because I always think that if I get something today, next week I'm going to find something that was better, and then I'm going to have withdrawals and buyer's remorse, and I've lived through that. And today I can honestly say, and it's so lovely to see how you talk about taking that theme from being the raw to the mature, because today I think I've trained my family well enough that it's entertaining is above average, that my monster doesn't have to come out. And I think in the workspace, I'm also, I choose my poison. I'm aware of when to let it go and when to speak my mind. I think my friends all laugh at me because they always say, Meryl always says it like it is. And I think my clients always say, I always say it like it is. So I'm trying not to be as honest with my maximizer because I don't think everybody can always cope with it. And as you said in the beginning, when I deal with somebody with harmony or empathy, I have high empathy and I can feel that what they're telling me and what I am feeling are not aligning. And I just feel so insecure when people aren't able to be straightforward. So I think my maximizer is very honest and it just says it like it is, and it always wants better. If I've got to wrap a gift, it's got to be wrapped beautifully. It's got to have a bow. It's got to have all the frills. But I definitely know that it's far more towards the mature. I can still work on it a hell of a lot more, but definitely I'm not that monster that I used to be.
Well, I want to ask you about that monster term. What I really want to ask is, what does the monster want?
perfection. And what is perfection? Perfection is not realistic.
How do you determine what would perfection would look like? Where does the ideal for perfection come from? How do you get it? How do you go, this isn't perfect?
I don't know, Adam. I think it's just inside of me that I want something better. I don't know. I sometimes wish that I could just accept things, and I just can't. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Well, I like that you send gifts that have great wrapping. I like that you're wearing this scarf with the nice sweater. I like that. I'm wondering about this internalization of it that that you might perceive it in a way like you're resisting it. You know, you call it a monster, and you know the term that my friend Rhonda used to describe hers. And so I'm like, well, wait a minute. Maybe there's a way to live more harmoniously with this quality of yours that is well honed over the course of your lifetime. It's served you well. It's served those you care about well. So I just want to revisit the view of it so that it's like, oh, I love Maximizer. It takes a little getting used to for some people, but yeah. So I think that people with Maximizer might feel burdened with it, instead of it being like this gift that you have for other people. And other people with Maximizer, feel free to chime in. I'm definitely not putting you on the hot seat, Meryl. It just made me curious.
Well, I do think that, some of the influencing themes are that more external, like I've said, but they can feel like almost like relentless drivers, and Maximizer particularly, because like Meryl said, it's like everything. It's like you want better, better, best. Better isn't good enough. Best is what's good enough, and it can get down to the tiniest thing. And in other ones that can feel like drivers, achiever, strategic. And so I think though, focusing, and Maximizer is one that maybe you've had a lot of people bump up against, because it is a really, it's about an expression of something that's best. I think you said it really well when you said you're picking and choosing, where the efforts are best spent, so it doesn't feel frustrating. But I think, what is so important to just really understand, particularly about this group of themes, significance, Maximizer, is that relentless driver drives you to excellence. It's like really can push people to some really amazing achievements of whatever sort. And so I would like you too, like Adam is expressing here too, to feel that if you have Maximizer, you love that about yourself, because it is very special, I think.
It's Maximize. It's the best. What I'm wondering too is maybe society has a problem with these themes. Every one of these, as I look through it, let me do my screen share to show some of these visually. They're hard to ignore. Activator, you can't ignore. I got one of the guys in this group. They're a group of 6 engineers, 5 males, 1 female, and the guy with Activator number 1, he's like bent his rings on his binder. We gave him all binders. He bent them out. He's like constantly got to move, and it's been really kind of interesting. We did a group activity with them, which was really kind of fun. And to see him, he was the one activating the whole thing, and everybody else got into flow around him. You can't ignore it. Command, nobody has command in this group, but when command shows up, everybody's going to have to, deal with command, because they're just going to say what they think. If you think as Maximizer, you say the truth, and, people have a hard time with it, at least you're picking the best truth. Command is like any truth has got to be said. I'm just kidding. I don't know if that's true. But it's like, yeah, it's out there. Communication, my brother has this as his number 1, and he just can go off the charts needing to communicate and connect and all that. So you can't ignore that one. Competition, when they're in your face, egging you on and razzing you and being like, come on, you're falling behind. It's hard to ignore that one. And maximizer, when they're like, nope, this isn't good enough. It could be better. Can't ignore that. Self-assurance, you can kind of ignore because they ignore you first. You know, they're like, yeah, it's my world. You're just a squirrel trying to get a nut. That's it. Significance, it'll show up, you know, like very motivational and inspiring and wants things to count and all of that. And then woo, you can't ignore a woo. If you ignore a woo, they're just going to woo even harder. So these themes, maybe the thing they all have in common is you can't ignore them. I can ignore harmony. I can ignore includer. I can ignore strategic. That's pretty quiet under the radar. Intellection, they just will sit there with their resty thinking face, you know, but when it comes to these influencing themes, they mix it up and they make life interesting. They shouldn't call it influencing themes. They should call it interesting themes.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, Adam, I've got maximizer, activator, and competition in my top 10. And I promise you I'm regularly in trouble with other people. And my communication, as I said, is number 34. So I don't always communicate things very well. And I need to get my message across. And sometimes I have to be heard. And so people aren't listening and I need them to listen. My activator says start now, and my maximizer says do it properly, and my competition says, well, you know what it says.
Well, how come you're so delightful then? I'm confused. Is that maybe in South Africa you are considered a monster, but like you're like delightful, and I don't think any of those things. I think you're a wonderful communicator too, by the way, very engaging and clear and dynamic. So I don't know.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, that's what I want, you know, as we get through these 34, and the process in general, the whole point is to find that place where, you know, you are appreciating and spending as much time as possible in the way that theme can serve you. Because it's all 34, they're special qualities, and the way they're combining are special. There's that report that I just really enjoyed, the genius and beauty of the theme. I think we tend to focus on, you know, the negative or the contrast or the way these things show up and rub up against other people, and that's important to use that to mature the theme, to experience more you know, alignment in life. But I think it's so important to really find those ways and dig deep sometimes to really go back and say, like, how did this theme serve me? And, you know, you'd just be a different person with a different order. So I want you to all walk away feeling really solid in the way these themes express for you. And I'm just saying it right now, like, I will spend as long as possible one-on-one if you're not sure about that, because just this is what it's about. And yes, sometimes you'll have to nuance that contrast away or to a place that's manageable so that you can spend more time in that really powerful place of what these give you. I do want to make sure we get to the enablers worksheet, so maybe that's actually a good segue, because that is a way to talk about the really positive parts of the theme. So Adam, if you could, when you get a chance, bring up either the worksheet or a sample. Does anyone want to share just their experience with filling it out, any questions, but particularly maybe walk us through one of the themes that you have on there? Did this one feel a little easier than the 4 domains?
Not to me.
Well, I would suggest that if you had, and I'm guessing because people are quiet, maybe they felt the same way, the examples. If you tell yourself a story about when did I use that? When might have that shown up? That I have found for me and for other people just generally will unlock some of the other discussion points. So if you're working one-on-one with a client, you can actually take them through this during a session, or what I typically have people do is fill it out before the session, even if they don't, get it all complete, and bring it to the session so that we talk very specifically about this. And we do the enablers for just the reason I was talking about. Everyone's going to jump to the ruts. Everyone's going to jump to the contrast. But we want to start with the positive way that shows up. And actually what that'll do when you're working one-on-one, if you haven't had a lot of experience with the themes yet, is that it'll give you some examples to come back to with a client. Like, oh, well, I see that when we talked about this theme this way, this came up. And what might be some ways that happens. So usually specific examples are the easiest way into these bigger questions. So why don't we start there? Any examples?
Examples of how they've seen their themes be positive and useful?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good.
I'll go back to my maximizer, and I'd just like to say, I think when I said that it can be a monster, that doesn't apply in a coaching situation. I think my maximizer is far more mature in a one-on-one coaching environment where my maximizer takes the coachee and just wants to help them be better at whatever. So whatever support they need, whatever discussions they need, I'm really just the outcome for my maximizer is they will come out the other end better than they started the coaching process. So I love my maximizer in a coaching environment. I'm grateful for that gift because I do believe that the coachee benefits from my maximizer theme.
I agree, and I think that's a great example of a very positive match of a choice of profession. It's almost, like couldn't be better really. The maximizer in that role can help people see what they can't see on their own. And that's a great example.
Thanks, Meryl, for saying that, because when you were talking about it being your monster, I call it my beast. And so I just went down like a dark maximizer path, but I feel like that comment helped me see the light again of I agree, one-on-one. I think it's easy to be a maximizer. In groups, it can be a little bit more troublesome, but I think that's also the rest of my 4 themes get in the way. But I'm always really proud of my maximizer. It just always makes I just feel like I always make my life harder by being a maximizer.
That might be the motto for maximizer. It's a burden to be the best.
It is. It never turns off.
Yeah, it challenges us every single day.
Yes.
I think it's the theme that drives me the most.
Yes.
And sometimes I do have to dial it down for absolute. I just have to say, not today, maximizer. Today, you're going to have a holiday.
Yes. I think maximizer is you need people interrupting your theme purposely.
Yeah.
Well, I do think it also helps maximizer to nuance because it can get into such overdrive. But when another person is sort of throwing a wrench in the plans or performing something not at the best level, there does have to be an adjustment. And so what is that adjustment? And I think that can be kind of fun to work with, hard perhaps, but fun to see the outcome.
I want to also propose this too, to look at your maximizer in relation to your other themes. Because when I look at input and maximizer, input in a way is maximizer in the sense that you're looking for what's useful and you want the most useful thing. Like that dining room table and buyer's remorse, when you were describing that, I'm like, that sounds like how my input works. And then I look and I see you have both.
And individualization.
Right. Very specific, useful, the best. And I feel responsible to make sure that all those are true. That's the Merrill guarantee. And then I look at Lauren with maximizer and maybe the individualization as well. The self-assurance to me should make you more like, hey, my maximizer's cool, deal with it. I'm good with it. I'm assured within it. Let's see, who else do we have with our maximizers? Kendra, all right. So maximizer and responsibility again. I feel responsible for the best. I got to have the best results. The results have got to be there. If they're not there, then that doesn't count. And then I see harmony, and I'm like, that helps cool it down a little bit.
Yep.
I was kind of wondering if that did soften my monster, the harmony to the maximizer.
I would say almost definitely.
Yeah, harmony just pretty much cools down everything. And now look at that, though. Look at how a lot of these influencing themes, they heat things up.
And
definitely. Yeah, and a lot of the relationship building themes cool things down. Individualization, what's up with you specifically. Connectedness, there's no more chill theme than connectedness. Let's just cosmically chill out, man. And you have positivity that is like, everything's great, it's good. If you had maximizer and positivity, maybe that might help, or developer actually kind of can have an edge to it. So, there's one.
Well, I've seen developer paired with maximizer, and that heats it up pretty strong.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and I know we're talking about
driver in the combo.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to keep it on the influence,
of course.
But I just we can't forget to look at our themes in relationship with the other. Like Felinda talks about the 5 fingers. One of your themes is maximizer, but there's 4 other fingers and 3 others and an opposable thumb. And so you have to kind of see how that hand works together.
Well, and I think going back to the worksheet, that might feel why it's hard on some of these to parse these apart, because they really are rolled into one. And so I think as you think of examples and as you hear people explain the examples, you'll be able to go through that person's top 5 and do just what Adam did as he was looking at, okay, what else is here and what might amp up this, potential theme or what might cool it down. And so that's where you can often be brought to that next level place. Seeing how they might work in harmony a little bit more. Can you pull up Susan's worksheet example? I think just seeing how someone else filled it out sometimes is so helpful. And let's see. I don't think she has any. Okay, I was going to try to use an influencing theme example, but Susan doesn't have one. So let's just go through her learner. Learner is number 1 for her, and if you met her, you would see that right away. So her first one, I'm just going to read it. I know everyone can read it, but for those who are on the call, later calling in. So to continue to gain new knowledge through the study and experience and enjoy the process. So that's, the purpose as it applies to her specifically. And then an example would be to share the new information with others on the team, take courses, attend webinars, follow Gallup Coaches Facebook group, Theme Thursdays, read articles and books. I have learner, but I don't even do all those things. So she, that's what number 1 learner looks like. And what would be a next level for her? To narrow her focus and not get sidetracked by rabbit holes, to dial down and limit her sharing so it's not to overwhelm. Others, you know, because sometimes the learner's like, information dump, here's everything I learned, and now I think you need to learn it too. So you don't put learning ahead of the workload, which is very hard for a learner because learning sometimes feels like you can't start your workload until you learn the whole thing, and then you can begin. So, you know, that's a good example of like, she excels when she's learning and actively learning. That gives her energy. And so I think it is important to really break apart each of your themes and think about this very carefully, because you'll start to see in your life times you may have kind of shut one down. I have learned it, and there was a time that I was like, I've done all these programs, and I have intellection, so I'll go all the way to, like, you know, the highest level I can until I'm teaching it. I don't feel like it's enough, you know. And so there was one time where I shut it off, and I was like, what's wrong with me? Why am I so blah? You know, I wasn't feeding my learner. And so you'll see that, you know, where Maximizer might feel like a driver, shutting it off is not the answer. That will feel it's impossible really, but it'll just feel negative. So to find ways where you can really see how that's serving you, and then take it through the process to, you know, dial down some of those rough edges where it's getting in the way of, you know, maybe relationships or feelings, and, you know, the place where it feels like it's getting to the level of the beast or monster, right? But to have outlets, and I think identifying them in something like this process can be really useful for you, for your clients. So that's a bit of a little lecture there, but.
Yeah, I do think the question of, does it matter? Does it matter if this is maximized? Sometimes the answer is absolutely it matters. But other times it's like, no, it really doesn't. And you can apply that to any of the themes. Does it matter if I win? Sometimes yes, it matters. Sometimes not. Does it matter if I clear up the confusion or say what I need to say with command? Does it? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Does it matter if I get started right now with my activator? And I think that question of does it matter, not in a dismissive way, just in a face value way, does it matter, will help, find the right.
When that activity comes up, because the impulse of the theme, it's always going to matter. You're always going to be like, of course it matters. Of course it has to be the best. Of course I have to win. But then by just taking a step back and like, well, does it matter in this instance? Understanding it matters to you, but maybe saving your energy because it doesn't matter in that activity or that moment, so that you can channel your energy into a place where it really does, or your time, or your focus. Or maybe, like if I pull back here, it's not going to cause me problems. It'll take time later. You can use that doesn't matter question to just, temper the impulse when it doesn't serve you.
Yep.
But then when it does, you go for it, Maybe it doesn't matter, but you've got time for it. So go for it, that kind of thing. Or you can really use that with any theme in any way, really anything you're facing.
And I think a lot of our ruts come from when our theme goes into beast mode, whatever the theme is. Like when my input goes into beast mode, I'm collecting stuff. When my ideation goes into beast mode, I'm bouncing off the walls with ideas. And when my intellection goes into beast mode, I'm tiring people out, and when my individualization goes into beast mode, I'm like asking them questions that I don't have the right to ask.
So we're getting to our hour point, and I'm not going to shut it down. I will still talk and be here, but I just want to, respect time. So I'll go over the homework really quick, and then we can keep talking about whatever you'd like to talk about. If it's anything that we've talked about tonight, the influencing themes or the enablers worksheet, or if anything else. So the homework, continue watching the coin videos. And then your executing themes video, that'll be what we talk about next week. And then you'll do the ruts worksheet. So it'll be interesting to see if you find that one easier to fill out or not. And, we'll come and we'll talk it over. But I just want to thank you all for being here. And again, we're still here, we're still talking, but if you do have time constraints, I want to respect that.
Good. Good talk. Yeah, so anybody have any questions they want to stick around for? All right, well, let's end it here then. And yeah, if you did think of something after I said that, just stick around. But everyone else, feel free to go about your life, your maximized life.
Not for me. No maximizer here.
We're here.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank
Great
you.
night.
Bye.
Bye.